finally.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Berry. Welcome to my first edition of Sunday Pasta in Chef Jen's Kitchen. So it seems only fitting to start my pasta journey this year with my grandmother's pasta recipe, which I have not made it this way in quite a long time. She always made it in a food processor. I feel like she was ahead of her time using a food processor, and so I'm going to use that today. So this is the recipe that I learned when I was, 7, 8 years old. It's the one that my family makes, and it is just all-purpose flour, eggs, a little bit of olive oil, and she put some salt in it. I don't remember her putting salt in it, but I was looking at her written recipe, and I'm going to put that here so you can see it. And it does, it has a little bit of salt. So I don't usually put salt in mine, but I'm going to put some salt in it today just in honor of her. So this is going to make about 3/4 of a pound of pasta. And as I said, all-purpose, she specifically said unbleached white flour. So we're going to go for 1.5 cups. And it's going to go straight into my food processor. Now, I like to scoop and level off when I measure flour. And I'll get rid of that flour there. And then 2 eggs, 2 whole eggs. There's lots of different ways to make pasta, and if you follow along with me this year, you're going to see me make it a lot of different ways. This is just one way. Okay, and then grab a towel really quickly. A little pinch of salt. Her recipe actually said 1/4 teaspoon. I'm not going to measure it. I'm just going to pinch it. It's okay. And 2 teaspoons of olive oil. This is some really fruity, yummy olive oil from Sicily, which is not where my grandfather is from, but that's okay. No one's going to know. 2 teaspoons. And then I'm just going to process it together. It's going to hopefully come into a ball. And I'm going to let the processor knead it for me a little bit. And if it's a little sticky, I might add some extra flour, but I'm going to see how it comes together. And if it doesn't totally come together, I might add some extra olive oil. We'll see. I think I might. Just a tiny bit. Typically when I am planning on pasta dough, I count for about a cup of flour to 1 egg, plus it needs a tiny bit more moisture than that. Stop this for a second. I'm going to check the consistency. I think it needs a little bit more. It is pretty dry today. So I'm going to go for a little bit more olive oil. Again. Hopefully it's going to come into a ball here in a second. The other thing you can do when you're making pasta dough, if you're finding that it's really dry and the temperature or the moisture that's in the air definitely affects our dough, is you can sprinkle in a little bit of water if you need to. But you don't want to go overboard on that, because you don't want to end up with a really sticky mess. Okay, it's coming together. I think I'm going to abort Grandma Frasca's KitchenAid method, and I'm going to knead it a little bit by hand. I think my flour might be in the way, so I'm going to move this out of the way. Okay. I'm also a one-woman show today, so I'm going to have to adjust my camera angles occasionally. So I'm going to adjust my close-up so you can see what is happening here. Okay, so I'm just going to gather this up, pull it together. Hope I didn't add too much moisture. I don't think I did. And I'm just going to knead it for just a minute. I want a nice smooth dough. You can't really, it takes a lot to over knead your pasta dough, to be honest. I do like a stiffer dough. I think starting out, a lot of people want their doughs to be really soft and malleable, and you will find that when you go to roll it out on a pasta machine, or maybe if you're going to roll it out by hand, it can be really sticky. You need extra flour for rolling it out. It's hard to get a really nice cut on your pasta noodles, and so a stiffer dough is nice. The addition of olive oil adds a really nice like mouthfeel, like toothiness, and it makes it a little bit more pliable, a little easier to work with. Okay, that's pretty good. And then the other thing we want to do with any kind of dough is we want to let it rest. So I'm activating the gluten that's in the flour by kneading and with the moisture, and it starts to want to seize up on you, and we want to let it rest so it's easier to roll out and we get a better texture of our dough. Okay, so you can just throw this on a cutting board and cover it. You could wrap it in plastic. I'm just going to put it into a bowl, and I'm going to put a tea towel over it, and I'm going to let it rest. Okay. So ideally, we're going to let our pasta dough rest for at least 15 minutes. I really go with more of a 30 minutes minimum to up to an hour. You can put your pasta dough in the refrigerator for up to 24 hours. Anything more than 24 hours, you're going to start to get some oxidizing from the egg, the raw egg that's in there, and the flour is reacting, and your dough will turn green, and it will not be very pretty. So, no more. Okay, so while my dough is resting, I'm going to do a little bit of prep for some of my garnish. And this is a really like simple pasta sauce that we're gonna do. It's very rich and decadent, and I feel like it's appropriate for the new year. And some of you might be trying to be healthier, but I think pasta should be a healthy part of your diet. And so should some luxury ingredients. So I have some really lovely bottarga from Italy. A good friend of mine, she's fantastic, she's a great chef, and she brought this back as a gift when she was in Italy a couple months ago. And so I'm gonna make a pasta with bottarga sauce. So bottarga is salted shad roe, which is a gnarly looking fish, but they take the roe sack or the egg sack and they salt it, and you can get the whole lobes of it, which this is a specialty ingredient. It can be a little bit challenging to find, but you can get it online. If you have an Italian or Mediterranean market, they might have it. A caviar shop might have it. So I would highly recommend searching it out. there's lots of other salted roes that you can find a little more easily. Herring roe, I see all the time in markets. So, but try some. It's delicious. It's like this umami punch with lots of salty brightiness, and it's just really, really good, and it's beautiful in pasta. This one has already been grated for me, so it's not the whole loaf, and I'm going to use the whole thing. But I want some texture in my pasta. I always think about texture when I'm creating a dish, and so I'm going to make some cheesy breadcrumbs, kind of Parmesan-y breadcrumbs. I'm actually using Romano, as my grandmother would use, which is my favorite too. It's a little bit funkier because it's from sheep's milk. So I'm going to start out with some bread. I had a leftover, I feel like I always have leftover bread hanging out, and I cut it into cubes. I took the crust off, and I'm going to just pulse this in my food processor. I already have it out. I might as well use it twice. And then I'm going to toast it in a pan in some of my yummy olive oil. And I'm going to put a whole bunch of Pecorino Romano, and don't let anybody fool you. It is okay to put a little bit of cheese with seafood. Not a ton, a little bit. An accent of cheese, an accent of salt. Okay, so I'm just going to pulse this. I have to plug it back in though. I don't know if you know my super fancy kitchen I'm working in. This is actually my dining room. It makes a really good pasta making station, but also my real kitchen is under renovation. So that's why we're in here. All right. If I was using some fresh bread, I would want to toast this a little bit to dry it out at a low temperature in my oven, maybe 325. And I don't want to totally pulverize this, but I don't want super, super big chunks either. And this is rustic home cooking. I'm okay if my breadcrumbs are not all exactly the same size. Okay, I'm getting there. Almost there. That looks pretty good. Okay. All right. Got a couple things ready to go here. I'm gonna change my camera angle and move my food processor out of the way. Okay. So the other thing I need for my breadcrumbs is my Pecorino. And when I was growing up, my grandmother and my mother would buy big blocks of Romano. My grandmother always called it Romano. In all of her recipes, it says Romano. It does not say Pecorino. Wasn't until I think I was in culinary school that I realized it was Pecorino Romano. But they would buy big, huge blocks of it, and then they would pulverize it in the food processor, and we would have big jars of it in the refrigerator to put on all of our pasta and anything else. And I have since found that I really prefer it a little bit finer, more kind of ethereal texture. The food processor does a great job, but it kind of leaves it a little bit grainy. I like it a little bit silkier, and so I like to use a microflame. You can also use the fine holes on a regular box grater, and you can definitely do this in a food processor if you don't want to take this extra little step. I just really prefer the texture of it. And I'm not going for too much. Remember, this is just an accent. I don't need a ton of it, and I'm not going to finish my pasta with any cheese. I know. Don't come at me with that. There's not going to be any extra cheese in here. This is it. Okay, I'm going to set this aside. I'm going to get my burner turned on. I don't want this too hot. I'm not trying to really fry my breadcrumbs. Bring this over. Hopefully I've got a good shot of this. Okay. I'm going to use some of my yummy olive oil. A nice coating on the bottom. And I might just use all of these breadcrumbs. Hold on, I'm having technical difficulties getting. There we go. Okay. It's about a generous cup of breadcrumbs. I think that's going to be really good. Oops. That happens. You can also keep from doing that by sticking your finger in the bottom of your food processor and holding it in there, or you can let it fall into your pan like I did. No big deal. And I just want to get these all coated. I use a nice amount of olive oil. I don't want them greasy, but they're going to soak up that olive oil, and it's going to help them toast up. I don't want dry breadcrumbs. I want yummy, delicious breadcrumbs. And I am going to season these with some salt, just some kosher salt, even though I am putting some Romano in there. I think I need to go back to just calling it Romano. I hear my grandmother's voice, her Cincinnati accent. I don't know if that's really a thing, but I just made it one. It really is. Okay. I'm just going to let these go, and when they start to get a little toasty, I am going to add my Romano in and get it nice and coated. And then I'm going to put these aside, just put them in a bowl. And this is going to be the topping. It's going to be the crunchy bits on top of my yummy, luscious pasta. I say hi to Kodiak. Excuse me. Okay, these are getting nice and toasty. So golden brown. I want them golden brown all over. But it's going to happen a little bit faster now. Well, that's looking really good. Okay, so for the last little bit, I'm going to add in my Romano. And I kind of want like crispy little bits of cheese and crispy little bits of breadcrumbs. I'm just going to stir these around so they're coating the bread, and then kind of like, I don't know, like brittle, you know, except Romano brittle. I think that sounds good. And I'm going to let them kind of like get crispy. You ever done like a cheese frico with Parmesan cheese, or that's kind of what I'm going for, or that, you know, when the cheese oozes out of a grilled cheese sandwich and it gets like crispy on the sides, is kind of what I want to have happen here. All right. And I don't want these to brown. I don't want to get that bitterness. I'm actually going to turn the heat off. I'm just going to let a little bit of the residual heat happening in here crisp up that cheese a little bit more. I think it's pretty good. And as it cools off, it will actually get a little bit crispier. Okay, I'm going to thaw it. Beautiful. I'm going to get this into my bowl. And this is going to be just a little So my pasta dough's been resting, and it's been more than 15 minutes, but probably not a half an hour. I went ahead and set up my pasta machine. I have a couple different pasta machines. This is my oldest one, so I'm going to use this one today since we're going old school. I'm going to take a little picture of my pasta though, because I forgot to do that when it's done. I actually think I probably could have kneaded it a little bit longer, but it's okay. It'll be fine. The pasta machine will do some of that like second kneading for me. The other thing I want to do before I start rolling this out is make some room for myself. Put my glasses away. I always need them, so I always have them near. I'm going to set up a drying station for my sheets of pasta, because the first part of rolling out pasta dough is to sheet it. And I'm going to do this in 2 batches, so I'm going to do half of the dough first, and then I'm going to do half of the dough second. And I need a place to put it. And so my grandmother and my mom hung their pasta dough. And a lot of people do that. They hang their sheets, they hang their cut pasta, and it's great if you have either a lot of space. We used to have these, like, you know, those half dowels, the half moon shaped dowels, and we would put them across, you know, chairs and things, and drape pasta everywhere, all over the eating area room, and that's fantastic. I don't have that kind of space right now. I have hung them on wooden hangers and like hung them up, you know, around places, and I'm sure you saw my big old hairy dog there. Thought it was an invitation to eat some pasta dough. So I like to lay my pasta sheets out on some tea towels, or if you have a big, this is an old tablecloth that I have actually like cut so I can use it on my outside table around the umbrella. And I'm just gonna lay this out here, and this is going to allow me to lay my sheets of pasta on it. It's not gonna stick. My pasta sheets aren't going to stick to this. You want something that is lint free, so you don't want to use like terry cloth or the kind of towels that, you know, like leave lints on things. So tea towels are really great, muslin's really great, linen, these kinds of cotton, 100% cotton tablecloths. Just make sure it's nice and clean. And let me find a place for my camera. It also alleviates having so much flour all over the place, because you really don't, at this point, you don't want to be adding a lot of flour to your dough. Extra flour right now is going to make it tough. It's going to not really absorb into the dough very well, and so we want to try and not use any flour as much as we can at this point. Now, if my pasta dough is sticking to my machine at all, I will use a really, really light amount of flour, and I'm talking like super light, like a really light dusting, and you brush off any extra so there's barely any there. I don't think I'm going to have that sticking problem, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. So I've got nice holes in my dough, which means this is a pretty nicely made dough with a little bit of kneading. It could be a little better than that. It's okay. I'm harder on myself than other people. You want to attach your pasta machine to like a cutting board. You want a heavy cutting board, or a couple, if you have a heavy duty counter that is no more than, like, I think 2 inches is about the most. I was trying to put 2 of my boards together, and I couldn't remember which ones I usually use for this one, but this one's gonna work. I just don't want my machine to slide around on me too much. And I'm going to press out my dough. And I've got, on this one, I've got my rollers here, and then I've got some cutters. I've got a fettuccine cutter and a tagliatelle cutter here. I'm actually gonna do something I always tell people not to do, and I'm gonna use my tagliatelle, because why not? It's 2023. I like to break rules. That's what we're gonna do. I wanna make sure that my machine is at the lowest number for my machine. Some of them are 0, some of them are 1. This one is a 1. Okay, so I'm gonna put my handle in. And I want to, we're gonna do this laminating and kneading process first. So I kinda wanna press it out. Okay. And then it's gonna go through my machine. I might need to tighten that down a little bit. Okay. I think it's just gonna slide around on me today. It's all right. That's why we're here. You're gonna see the good, the bad, the not so good. Okay, so I'm gonna do this fold where I'm gonna do in thirds, kind of like an envelope. And I'm also trying to widen the width of my pasta sheet, and I want to try and get it almost as wide as my machine. So after I do my fold, I'm gonna do some dimpling. And then my grandmother does this 8 times before she goes up to the next number. Okay, so we're gonna go. Pull my dough out. You can see it's starting to have straighter sides, and I can go again into my thirds, and I'm gonna try and, as you're overlapping and you get areas of your pasta sheet that is thicker than other areas, is when you get the kind of wonky long bits that come up on the ends. Go. Okay, so now that's all on the very first number, the very first setting on your machine. Now I'm gonna pull out the knob, and I'm gonna go to the next number, which is 2. And I'm just gonna go through it one time. And then I'm gonna go to 3. And then 4. And 5. And I think on my grandmother's pasta machine, 5 was as high as she went. But I am going to make my determination based on how thick my pasta is. Okay, typically you want to be able to read through it. So a newspaper, I'm going to take it a little thinner. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, because of the space I'm working in, it's starting to get long, harder to work with. So I'm just going to cut my sheet in half. Use a knife, a little bench scraper, which doesn't want to cut on the, there we go. And now, I'm going to take this to a 6. I usually like to go to a 6. I would probably leave it this thick if I was doing ravioli or tortellini, but I want it a little thinner for my tagliatelle. Okay, beautiful. And that's what I'm looking for. So I can see through it. I bet I can read through it. I can definitely read through it. Okay, so at this point, I am going to make this about the size that I want my pasta strands to be. And usually when we were going for our long pastas, fettuccine, linguine, spaghetti, we want them somewhere between 12 and 18 inches. Anything longer than that can be really hard to eat, twirl around a fork. It's also harder to cut. But I also kind of look at like, how long is my sheet? Am I going to end up with wasting a lot of pasta? And I don't want to waste pasta. I'm at home. This isn't a restaurant. I'm going to use all of it. So I'm just going to go in half and I'm going to eyeball it. Tearing my pasta sheet. Okay. I'm going to get a knife. So I'm not frustrated constantly. There we go. Okay. So now I'm just going to lay these out as I roll them onto my tablecloth here, and I'm going to put this one through my number 6. I like the texture of the dough. I'm going to do something, should have something going. It's kind of leathery feeling, which is what we want, so, but not dry. And then I'm going to let my sheets kind of dry out a little bit before I cut them. If I go to cut my sheets right away, and I had a wetter pasta dough than this, I would end up with a big clumpy mass of pasta, which would not be very nice. One, I can stack them. I'm going to make this one a tiny bit longer. I am going to have a little bit of waste on this one just because I have this funky end, but I'm not going to throw it out. I'm going to save this, dry it out, and then I'm probably just going to like cut it into little rags, and I can throw it in soup. I can cook it up, put some sauce on it, and it'll be delicious. Okay. And I'm just going to let that dry. I'm going to let it dry out. I have a bag of them, and I'll just add it to that bag. And then I'll have some extra magliatelle or miscut. I'm not worried at all that these are all slightly different. If I was a restaurant and I was your chef, I'd probably tell you to do it again. No, just kidding. Okay, so now I'm going all the way back to that number 1, and I'm going to start all over with my other dough ball. Let me see. I'm going to check it. Okay. So I'm just kind of tapping it in there. Getting it going. Sometimes bunches up there. It's okay. We're just going to go with it. Come on, come on. All right. So I've got my fine tagliatelle. And I am going to try to make some room for myself, trade places, and just lay. let that go. And while my water is getting there, I'm going to be honest, I don't measure a lot, but I'm going to measure for this so that I can write down exactly what I do in the recipe, and then you'll know what kind of adjustments to make. So I'm going to start with a half a cup of white wine. This is just a Pinot Gris, staying in the spirit of Italy. And this is just for a little bit of acidity and flavor. I'm going to need my knife again. Okay. Definitely something drinkable. So when we're talking about salting pasta water, I'm sure you've heard a million different things, but you want it pretty salty. I mean, we did put a little bit of salt in our pasta dough, but a lot of times pasta dough does not have salt in it, so it is what's flavoring our pasta. And our pasta water is part of our sauce, and so it's going to add seasoning to our sauce. And I'm actually cooking in a little bit less water than I normally do. Sometimes I'll fill up my big huge pasta pot if I'm making a lot of pasta, but I'm making an emulsified sauce, and so I want really starchy pasta water. It's going to be kind of hard to get because my pasta is not going to be cooking for very long, but it's going to give me a little bit of help. So I'm using 8 tablespoons, a stick of butter, and seems like a lot, but this is a decadent dish. And I'm going to put like 2/3 of it in my pan, and then I'm going to save the rest of this, and I'm going to just kind of chop it up. And I'm going to use this at the end to help, it's called mounting my sauce, and it's going to add some body, and it's going to help that emulsification process and give us a nice creamy, what is going to look kind of like a cream sauce, but has 0 cream in it whatsoever. And I'm going to turn my heat on fairly low. I do not want my butter to brown. I want the wine to warm up and maybe kind of reduce a little bit, but it's not essential. I want the butter to melt slowly. I'm going to add in my Botarga. I'm going to reserve this butter. I'm actually going to put it over here so it doesn't get too warm. Bring my platter over here. Something that helps your pasta water come to a boil faster is putting a lid on it. But a lot of my equipment is in my shed, and I didn't grab the lid for my pasta pot, so I'm just gonna go with it. I'll fast forward through some of this so you don't have to watch my water come to a boil. Okay, so now we're just kind of waiting. We're waiting for our sauce to get warm, our butter to melt, our pasta water to boil, and then we're going to season it. And I started talking about the seasoning of it, and then I got distracted. I apologize. So you probably heard season your water like the sea or the ocean. Well, what does that mean exactly? So what I like to do is a generous 2 teaspoons per quart of water. This is a gallon. So I'm going to do 2 heaping tablespoons, because there's 3 teaspoons in a tablespoon. I've got 4 quarts in a gallon. Just a little culinary math for you. Sorry, I teach that stuff. Anyway, and that is going to give me some really flavorful cooking liquid that is going to add some flavor into my broth. And then, it's not broth, it's just a sauce. Okay, I have everything I need. I just need my water to come to a boil. And it's getting there. And I'm I'm just gonna gather up all my pasta. I'm gonna put it on a little quarter sheet pan so it'll be easier for me to drop it all into my water all at one time. And when I pick up and handle pasta, I like to be, I don't want to like they're special animals. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get my botarga into my pan. Swirl it around. I bet that's a really fun noise to listen to. As is my dog barking outside. Actually gonna turn this down a tiny bit and grab a whisk. Okay. Oh, it smells good. We're almost there. While I'm still waiting for my pasta water to come to a boil, literally my pasta is gonna cook for 45 seconds. It's not gonna take long at all. I have some Meyer lemon season. Deliciousness. And I'm gonna grab my microplane. And I'm going to get some of the zest. All the zest because it's delicious. Okay, and then this is my super efficient kitchen setup. It's actually not that bad. Take a little strainer and get the juice in there as well. Oh, my water's boiling. So good. Yes. That's what we're looking for. Okay, my water is boiling. It's salted. I'm gonna drop my pasta. My pasta is gonna sink to the bottom. It's going to float back up. Once it's floating, it's pretty much gonna be done. I'm gonna take it out along with some of the pasta water and add it to my sauce, and whatever residual needs to happen is going to happen then. Make some space. I'm gonna give it, I like to give it a nice little stir when you first add it, especially this fine pasta like this. We don't want it to clump together in the water. And we're really almost there. I may never do tagliatelle again. I will, just because that's just who I am, but okay. So it's floating. Fresh pasta really does not need a lot of cooking time. It's already ready, I think. It's almost there. And I can see the starchiness that's coming out. I'm gonna go ahead and start pulling this out straight into my pan. Probably make a giant mess. It's okay. All right. Take this water off. Get some of the, I'm gonna start with half a cup of pasta cooking water. I might need a little bit more. I'm looking for it to coat all the noodles. None of them are going to be sticking together. Some parsley would be really nice on this. But we're going to do, this is going to be brown on brown on brown. I didn't even taste it. We should taste it. What does it need? Oh, it's good. Super like umami salty, but not like a salt lick, right? Deliciousness. Nice lemon flavor. I'm gonna give it a little bit more pasta water because I want it a little bit saucier than this. So if your sauce is getting too tight, add some pasta water. If it's too loose, let it cook down just a little bit more. That's great. I'm gonna turn the heat off. I'm gonna add in my butter, because more butter is always better. At least that's what I think. And maybe just a tiny bit more sauce, pasta water, tiny bit, not too much. Oh, there we go. Okay, so now I'm just going to platter it up. And come over here, get some of my crispy, cheesy breadcrumbs right on top. Definitely save some of that. It'll be great on a salad or to garnish individual plates. And now with my messy hands, I think I should try it. This looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. Even the struggles with the tagliatelle. Okay. It's actually really good. The noodles are super fine and tender and delicate. I love the crispy, crunchy bits on top. There's lots of tang from the lemon, and the botario just gives it the perfect amount of like briny, salty umami. It's delicious.